After I released my video yesterday afternoon, one of y'all, Gavin Burnett, left this comment. With regards to home defense, I live in the UK and I have a cricket bat under my bed. For sporting reasons only, of course. And yeah, while you do have to store your cricket bat somewhere, that comment did spark a very good discussion about alternative defensive tools. Now, if y'all watched me for a little while, you may know that I like guns a lot. I even have a couple of them myself, but the thing is, there could be situations where for one reason or another, you can't use them. Maybe you live like in the UK, like Gavin does, or maybe you just run out of ammo, and if that were to happen, you would want to have at least some way that you could protect yourself and your loved ones. So today we're going to talk about alternative defensive weapons that are not guns. And with this, I'm going to start at the least harmful and then work my way up in fun from there. And keep in mind, none of this is legal advice. It's for entertainment only, told from the perspective of a zombie apocalypse, because I sure would hate to run afoul of YouTube's guardians of uprightness and morality. And first up, we have high lumen flashlights. One thing that's nice about these is that many of us are already carrying them as part of our EDC or everyday carry, and you could use these to blind and disorient somebody. And if they have a nice little glass breaking bezel here, you can clobber them with it too. I mean, really, you could clobber, a zombie with anything. Now, when it comes to these kinds of lights, I do prefer one with a tail cap switch, just because that makes it a little bit easier to use, and also if you have to come down on something, then that's helpful too. But in addition to these smaller EDC style lights, you can get upgrades of sorts. Like there are some flashlights out there that are flashlight and bat combos. I know some people, some places, they'll take those, on their evening strolls and whatever, so that they'll have a light source and also something with which to clobber if that becomes necessary. Then after that is pepper spray, and that's available in a few different sizes and types. Like you can just get little keychain versions to, keep on your car keys, keep in your purse and stuff like that. And then you can also get the big Dog the Bounty Hunter style cans of bear mace and stuff like that. And one good thing about pepper spray is that it does give you a little bit of distance between yourself and an attacker. It'll blind them pretty good. They probably won't be able to follow you. And there's also a pretty low chance of it actually legitimately hurting somebody, unless, they have like some weird pepper allergy like that guy on the recent episode of Will Trent did. Then after that is tasers, and there's a couple of different kinds of these. First off, you have just the normal contact style tasers where you have to push them into somebody and then light them up. And then you have the fancier ones that shoot the little prongs out, and then it shocks them from there. So those are nice since they put some distance between you and the bad guy, but they are significantly more expensive. Now, kind of like with flashlights, you can get combo versions that include both a taser and a flashlight. I think there's actually one that's like a taser, flashlight, bat combo. I mean, that's a whole lot of stuff going on at one time. I don't know how high of quality things like that are. But the one thing I will say about tasers, even though I don't own one personally, is that, I go to gun shows on occasion, and when I'm there, there's just, rows and rows of guns, and I feel totally comfortable around them. I know they're not going to, like, jump up off the table and do anything, but if I hear somebody turn on a taser 100 feet on the other side of the exhibit hall, my butt puckers up. For some reason, I don't like that sound, and I'm sure other people feel the same way, so there is a little bit of an intimidation factor with those that may or may not be useful. Then after that, we have archery, and there's a few different kinds of bows. Like right here behind me, I have a crossbow. There's also compound bows, and then recurves and longbows. So, good thing about crossbows is that they have a mess ton of power. That one is a 150-pound draw, and it'll, if you're deer hunting, it'll go straight through and through if you have decent broadheads. The only downside to them, though, is that they take stinking forever to reload. Compound bows are a little bit better in that they allow faster follow-up shots, and they're also good since of the way that the gears are designed. Once you pull the string back, it's not very difficult to keep it back there. The hardest part's pulling it back. The gears, once you get it back there, they do their job so that if you're waiting on a deer to, just get at the perfect angle, perfect distance from you, then you can take your time and line up your shot. But both compound and crossbows are mechanically complex, and there's a lot that can go wrong with them, and that is where recurves and longbows start to shine, I guess, in your longer term zombie type situation or whatever. Since they don't have gears and all that kind of stuff, there's less that can go wrong with them in theory, but they do require more skill to use. And unlike something like a compound bow, once you get it pulled back, it is going to require more effort to keep it back there. Now, even though this is not archery related, one thing that y'all kind of brought up in the comments yesterday on that other video was using a nail gun. And I can tell you, I wouldn't want to get hit by a nail gun, but they will require at least some minor modifications to be used in that sort of defensive ranged capacity. And you'd probably want a battery operated version just so you're not running around the apocalyptic wasteland with an air compressor and a hose attached to your nail gun. Then after that, we have different kinds of blades, starting with a machete, specifically a bolo machete. Now, what I like about machetes is, first off, they give you some decent reach. They're flexible. They're very durable. A lot of people, when I've seen videos like this, they'll talk about something like a katana. And yeah, a katana is basically the sports car of swords. Very slicey, very nimble, very high quality if you get a good one. But it's a sports car. I wouldn't want to be running around, the wasteland or whatever with a freaking sports car. I would want a work truck. And that is basically more or less what a machete is. It's going to be a little more durable. You don't have to feel as bad about beating the crap out of it. Now, what I like about bolo machetes specifically, rather than like a Brazilian, I used a Brazilian Tramontina machete for years, is that it has this thicker front on it. And what that thicker front does is it allows you to go through thicker stuff. So while I'm doing work around the house, I'm able to hack through thicker branches a whole lot easier. Like this one, when I got it, I was surprised with how easily that it goes through stuff, and it doesn't really sacrifice its ability to go through thinner vegetation either. And I mean, if having to use it for defensive purposes, then the same rules can apply for other types of limbs as well, I suppose. Then after that, we have larger knives, specifically fighting style knives. The gold standard for this for a while now has been the K-Bar USMC fighting knife, which I have here. And I mean, there's a lot of good things about this that make it well suited for that. You got a clip point, which is good for piercing. It's a saber grind, which is going to give it some strength. But one thing I don't like about this for, say, longer term survival, where you might be using it for more bushcraft and other survival tasks, is that it does have a rat tang, where you have the blade, and then the blade kind of narrows down quite a bit as it goes through the handle, and then that's all you have on the end of it, once it reaches the pommel there. But kind of an upgrade, or at least a more modern version of this, is the BK7. This is full tang, meaning it is one solid slab of steel with handles just bolted to it. That's going to give it more strength, and it still has a higher saber grind, actually, and it also still has a clip point. So it's good for piercing. Good thing about longer blades like this is they're actually going to reach stuff. Unlike, our little short EDC blades, they have enough length that they can get to the important bits that you would want to get to on, say, a zombie or whatever. And another good thing about knives is that they can be fashioned into spears if you're able to affix them to some sort of long handle or something like that. Then we have hatchets and tomahawks. This here is just a regular little Fiskars hatchet. It's just designed, for, making firewood, clearing stuff around the house. But, I mean, it could do a significant amount of damage. A tomahawk is going to be thinner than a hatchet like this, and it's also going to have sort of a spike on the end in some cases. So if you're just wanting a fighting tool, then that's probably the way to go. But if you're wanting something more multi-purpose, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with a hatchet. But if you're wanting a compromise between a machete, a hatchet, and then a larger knife, then a kukri is a very, very good way to go. It really does combine a lot of the strengths of all three of those things. It's probably its best use is for slashing and hacking. I've seen videos of longer versions of these being used for ceremonial head loppings of water buffalo, and they can go all the way through in one shot. And another cool thing about the kukri is that, to my knowledge, it is the only like larger blade like this that's still in active use on modern battlefields, specifically by the Gurkhas. And those guys are extremely effective at what they do. Now, when it comes to kukris, there are a few different types. This one, even though it wasn't made in India or Nepal, it does kind of have a more traditional design in that the spine is super, super thick. So that's going to make it good for, splitting wood and stuff like that if you're using it for survival. Then behind me, I have BK21, and it's not quite as thin. This isn't the exact terminology, but I refer to them more as intermediate kukris, where they're not as thick as these, but they're also not as thin as the third type of kukri, which is a machete-style kukri. And with that, you basically have a blade with the same thickness as any other machete, just with this kukri recurve style shape. Then after that, we have some melee-style weapons, starting with things like baseball bats, or if you're like in the UK or Australia, your cricket bats. And what's nice about these is they're very easy to wield. They're not, cumbersome. And also they do give you a fair amount of reach. I mean, it's probably the longest weapon on this table. To get any better range than this, then you're going to have to move up to some sort of archery equipment, or, as some of y'all talked about, a nail gun. But some things that you can do with a baseball bat after the apocalypse, I wouldn't do this now, but you can upgrade them slightly. Like, you can do the whole Negan Lucille barbed wire thing, and also, I mean, you can do the Steve the Hare Harrington nail thing, to make it more effective against the zombies. Like I said, I wouldn't do that now, because that's the last thing you want, somebody to find in like the trunk of your car or anything like that. But bats, they do offer a lot of advantages if you're needing some sort of melee weapon. Then after that, we have different kinds of pry bars. And these, I mean, we all have these in, our toolkits, our garage, stuff like that. But they're nice since they are very heavy. They give you some reach. That they will do a pretty good amount of damage. But in my opinion, they're not as easy to wield as some of the other things. Just the balance is off. It's going to be kind of like a hatchet, where if you miss, then you're really going to be thrown off balance with it. Instead, if I had to use a household tool to defeat zombies, I would choose something like this framing hammer. Yes, it's still gonna be, a little bit front heavy, but it has the ability to deliver both blunt force trauma and then also some, we'll say, a tissue penetration as well. A framing hammer is a little bit different from a regular hammer in that, first off, it's longer, so you have better reach, and then also the claw just kind of goes straight out rather than, curving over and down. And this is designed so that you can go through drywall and then just pull sheets down when you're doing demo work. It's kind of like a zipper if you've ever done that before. The design of this actually looks somewhat similar to war hammers that were used, during like medieval and ancient times and stuff like that, where you have, your blunt end, but then you have a spike on the end. Given this isn't an actual spike, but in a pinch, it can form a very similar function. And then finally, we have a tri-fold shovel, and these are excellent multi-purpose tools. You can use them for digging, you can use them as a hammer if you're setting up your shelter. They even have a little bit kind of a saw here, but They have a fair amount of weight. They have a fair amount of length to them, so they can be used for slashing and hacking as well if you need to. I can tell you, I would not want to get hit by this. I actually killed a snake with this shovel one time. But good thing about these, in addition to their utility, is that they do not look out of place in pretty much any survival kit that you could put together. Like I actually keep this one in my truck so I can dig myself out in case I do something stupid and I get stuck. But bug out bags, camping packs, whatever, this isn't going to look out of place in any of those. Now, I think that most of y'all would agree with everything going on in the world right now, trying to prepare for one specific thing probably isn't the best idea. So if you want to see the 10 most important areas of preparedness to focus on to get you ready for pretty much anything, then click here. Or if you want to see 8 other kinds of defensive preps that everybody should have, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.